Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And today, we have a very interesting guest with us, all the way from India, Ram. So Ram is the lead for engineering, manufacturing, and energy domains in thought leadership and research team in Infosys, the Knowledge Institute. He's a regular blogger and speaker on recent trends in digitization. His topics of interest are Industry 4.0, sustainability, servitization, and future of work. He has co-authored a book titled Neoskilling for Digital Transformation and the Artificial Intelligence Revolution, along with Prof L Prasad from IIM Bangalore. So IIM Bangalore is well known to be one of the best universities in the world. The book on Neoskilling has an IIM Bangalore Connect beyond the two authors. It was released at the annual Future of Learning conference at IIM Bangalore back in 2019. So Ram, welcome. How are you doing today?
Very good morning, Watson. Thank you for having me on your show. Very good to see your energy. Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts on neoskilling.
Sure, it's an absolute honor. So Ram, what is meant by neoskilling?
Yeah, good question to start the conversation, Watson. So neoskilling in short stands for new skills, basically, right? Development of new skills, skills that are not yet very popular in the market. So as you know, today the industry is moving towards a skill-based world. So
Yes.
degrees are still important, formal education is still important, but there is always a gap between the education sector and what the industry demands. Now, if you ask why, it basically goes back to Moore's law, right? Gordon Moore said computing is going to double every 2 years. So computing is becoming affordable day by day. It is shrinking in size. So that opens up many new possibilities for the application of digitization, right? So digital transformation is happening at a very rapid pace. So as a fallout of that, many skills are becoming obsolete. So I will give you some practical examples of what these new skills are. So it's back in 2017, one fundamental question I had was that everybody started talking about skill development, reskilling.
Yeah.
So I thought, it's going to cost a lot to reskill the industrial workforce globally. Who's going to bear the cost? I wrote a blog about it that became very popular. And then when I approached Professor Prasad saying we can write a book about it, he readily agreed. So that's how it started. So new skilling is in the continuum of skill development. If you look at upskilling is basically incremental improvements in skills from what you already know. Reskilling is picking up new skills. So, and then we coined this term neoskilling, where we said business leaders, academicians should look at futuristic skill sets. So this term came out during one of the discussions we had with Professor Jose in IIM Bangalore. So you mentioned IIM Bangalore. So that was the cradle. That's where the book was born. We had discussions with several professors. I'll talk about it later. But basically, new skilling in short stands for new skill sets that the market is going to expect in future.
Very interesting. So you can expect a lot of things, right? So like, what are the methodologies or a methodology mentioned in this book, and how will this help university students and business leaders as well? Because we see disruption taking place, disruptive innovation is taking place.
Yeah, sure, Watson. So before I go to that part, let me give you some practical examples of what are these new skills that we are looking at, right? So it's very easy to say at a very broad level, it is digitization, AI, ML, but let's drill down, right? Let's take one industry, for example, let's say automotive industry, which is one of my favorite industries I track very closely. So at an industry level in automotive sector, if you see one of the big trends is electrification of mobility, right? So companies, countries have announced dates when they are going to stop manufacture of internal combustion engine driven vehicles because of their carbon emission. So because of that, making of electric vehicles has democratized the sector. Many small entrants are there. At the same time, it needs new skill sets. So skill sets which were very prevalent for decades in the internal combustion engine industry are becoming obsolete now. So some examples in auto industry, some of these are applicable for other industries also. So one is electric vehicle design and manufacture. That is one. And then how do you sell these vehicles? So there is inflation in the cost of vehicles. So subscription based business models is one. So sales teams have to be trained on how to move away from a one-time sale of vehicle to a subscription or usage-based pay-per-use type of business models. So Satya Nadella brought about this transformation very successfully in Microsoft when the
Mm.
IT industry, when Microsoft moved towards cloud-based SaaS services. So that will be a new skill sets required on the front end side for
Mm.
salespeople. If you look at inside a factory, new product design, for example, since I come from a manufacturing background, that is
Yeah.
one new skill which people have to pick up. Traditionally, manufacturing has focused on making cheaper, faster, better products, so design for manufacturability, where cost was a primary concern.
Yeah.
But now design thinking became very popular in between, where there was the focus on the people part. How do you ensure that the end customer of a product, a driver like you and me, how do you
Yeah.
empathize with their concerns? So design thinking was popular. Now I see design for sustainability becoming one of the new skill sets that is required in the automotive industry.
Mm.
Under that, some more subsets are designed for circularity. We can talk about design for repair, because
Yeah.
right to repair is becoming a big movement. Auto industry is one, the consumer electronics, these are industries where right
Mm.
to repair is becoming popular. So these are some new skill sets. Now I'll come to your other question on what are the methodologies
Yeah.
for new skilling. So there is no magic wand, there is no crystal ball gazing through which you
Mm.
can find these new skill sets. So it basically starts with awareness. So that's where one of the important points we covered in the book is that business leaders should look at what we call the second order environment. So the
Yeah.
first order environment is, if you take an auto industry, your immediate customers, your suppliers, your competitors, they belong to your industry. They are your first order environment. But today, innovation can come from any other industry and disrupt you. So manufacturers should look at their second order environment. They should look
Yeah.
beyond their industry. So I'll give one specific example of how software is becoming prevalent and how companies are struggling to adopt. Some other methodologies are the usual ones like expert opinion. You can
Mm.
conduct surveys. International Labor Organization has a very quantitative method of identifying the gap between supply and
Mm.
demand for talent. So these are some of the methodologies you can adopt to practice neo skilling.
Mm. Definitely, 100% I agree with you. So, based on what you mentioned, let's get back onto this book as well. Can you guide us through a chapter?
Sure. Sure. Watson. So one of my favorite chapters in the book is on how new skilling is applicable even for social transformation. So it is not about just about corporates. So again, we spoke to a lot of professors in IMB who focus
Mm.
on inclusive growth. How can technology reach the bottom of the pyramid? How can it reach every nook and corner of the country? Specifically in a country like India, this book was written before the pandemic. But if you look at the pandemic itself, that was a time period where digital technology helped the country a lot. So we came
Mm.
up with a hierarchy of how digital technologies, how neo-skilling will help us bring about a social transformation. So it basically starts with removal of information asymmetry. So whatever be the industry in, right? You could be a farmer, you could be a trader. Today, information is very valuable. So earlier,
Mm.
information flow was restricted to the privileged few, only those who have internet access or those who have other media channels like TV or radio. But today, mobile phone has brought reduced this information asymmetry. So whether it could be a weather issue or some fluctuation in price of a
Mm.
commodity, it very quickly reaches the hands of the bottom of pyramid. So digital
Yeah.
technologies basically starts with removal of information asymmetry, and then it
Mm.
brings about a social identity for people, again starting from bottom of pyramid. People who did not have an identity in the society, mobile
Mm.
number today is a very popular identity. And then in
Yeah.
India we had the popular Aadhaar movement, right? Aadhaar card, which Nandan Nilekani spearheaded. That all that has given a big social identity for people. Now what do you do with this social identity? That has brought about financial inclusion for people. So direct
Mm.
benefit transfers are very popular in India. Earlier, money that used to come from government to people, there were a lot of leakages due to corruption and other inefficiencies in the system. But
Yeah.
today, banking, mobility, direct benefit transfer, this has brought about financial inclusion. On top of it, it has helped improve health. Again, during COVID pandemic, the way the vaccinations were handled, how
Mm.
long queues for vaccination were avoided,
Yeah.
certificates for vaccination, all this was enabled by digital technologies backed by mobility. And then you have education on top of it. Today you have MOOCs courses which are very, very affordable, reaching you just need a mobile phone, reaching
Yeah.
every nook and corner. And to put all on top of all this, it brings about self-sustenance. So
Mm.
you can see some pani puri vendors who use digital technologies. So you need to be digitally literate. People may be literate technically speaking, but if you know how to use these digital technologies, you become self-sustaining. You can put up
Yeah.
any stall you want. It has enabled so many business models. So this is
Mm.
one of my favorite chapters in the book where we talk about neoskilling, not just for big corporates, but it has reached every common citizen in a developing country like India, and I'm sure it's happening in other
Mm.
countries too.
Definitely, 100%. Many countries. So, getting back, the book mentions about automation, also, in other words, artificial intelligence. So, can you like emphasize more on that? Because these days we see AI making a huge impact and an influence globally.
Sure, sure, Watson. So again, going back to Moore's law, right? So automation is a need of the hour because it has become so affordable, and business leaders, CXOs will definitely be worried about making a
Mm.
profit, about their stakeholder interest. So
Yeah.
automation cannot be avoided at this hour. So Industry 4.0, like you mentioned initially, that is one of the manifestations of
Mm.
automation. So we have seen earlier industrial revolutions. All of them have brought about sweeping changes in productivity, whether it was the steam engine, the electric
Mm.
motors, numerically controlled machine tools. So we
Yeah.
cannot avoid those. Those are trends that are happening. But what we can do is we can look at a triple bottom line perspective. So, like I said earlier, the earlier manufacturers were focused more on making products cheaper, faster, better, but now
Mm.
there is a people perspective and there is also the planet perspective. So designing products
Yes.
for sustainability is very important. So coming back to automation, the people part is has to be addressed when we talk about automation. So we came up with a framework in the book to address this question on automation. So
Mm.
jobs that are very high on repeatability, but very easy for programmability. Those are routine jobs. Those jobs will anyway get automated using robots or robotic process automation if it is a
Yeah.
desktop jobs. So these type of jobs that are easy to program but which have very low decisions to be made will
Mm.
one day or the other will eventually get automated. So those are the people who need to be reskilled in other emerging technologies. So again, going back to auto industry, it could be people who are involved in manufacture, assembly, testing of combustion engine vehicles.
Yeah.
They need to be trained in new skill sets. For responsible companies should take up this aspect. So routine jobs, like I said, will eventually get replaced by automation. So uh, business leaders need to put in a lot of effort. Today, governments have formed departments for skill
Mm.
development. Business leaders have formed departments for reskilling. All companies have taken it very seriously to reskill their workforce. So
Yes.
again, talking about skill sets, software is one area, right, which we cannot avoid. That's one skill set.
Mm.
Analytics, data analysis, software, those are areas which where there is a huge gap between demand and supply. So
Yes.
if you look at many products today are becoming software defined products. If you look at a automobile, they say it's becoming a computer on wheels. So when the
Yeah.
quantity and value of the software on board on a product exceeds that of the hardware, it becomes a software defined product. So that's one trend which we are seeing in the industry. So a
Mm.
lot of OEMs today are struggling to manage the software part because traditionally they have used it only for internal applications like
Mm.
ERPs and CRMs. But today, when software has to be embedded on their products like an automobile companies are struggling. So they seek out partnerships. They try to form separate divisions. And one more fallout of the software part is agility. So if you have a combustion engine driven vehicle, it usually takes 5 or 6 years to upgrade it because there is so much of hardware involved. But when you talk about a software defined product, uh, literally every day you can send updates over the air. So that's how flexible software makes to upgrade a product. So agility is becoming one important soft skill, agility to manage software products. So that's a long answer to your question. Automation is inevitable at this point. So from a people perspective, reskilling of people is very important. And from a corporate perspective, picking up these competencies, capabilities in these new skills like software, how do you do agile development with short stints of few weeks. All those are new skills that industries have to pick up.
Definitely. So that's it's well articulated, Ram. Thanks for that clarity, clarity because it was well explained.
Watson.
Yeah, sure. So, Ram, there is a clause now about this book, right? It says leaders must avoid a strategically myopic and intellectually improvised, ethically challenged, obtuse management approach, ensuring that they do not fall into the minimac trap as they undertake this journey. So, can you explain what is meant by this minimac trap?
Sure, Watson. Very happy to talk about it. So the
Sure.
Minimac trap was one more acronym we came up with, right? So when we write a book, we try to come up with new concepts. So the fundamental aspect there is that going back to Neoskilling, organizations like World Economic Forum have identified specific hard skills, soft skills on which professionals need to be trained. So if you look at hard skills, it starts from AI, ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There is RPA, cloud, all these digital technologies are the hard skills. On the soft skill side, you have skills like negotiation, people management, structured communication, critical thinking,
Mm,
innovation. These are
yeah.
specific hard skills and soft skills. But what we felt was that over and beyond all these skill sets, ethics is very important, both on the
Yes.
human side and on the algorithm side, right? So people need to be integrity need to be trained in people. We cannot assume, we cannot take it for granted that everybody will be ethical or follow integrity, especially when they are under stress. In a country like Japan, which
Mm,
respects integrity so much, there have been cases where quality data has been fudged in the steel industry, in auto industry. Volkswagen's Dieselgate scandal is a very infamous example, widely reported in the media. And if you look
yeah.
at the algorithm side, sometimes knowingly or unknowingly bias creeps into the AI algorithms because of the data that has been used to train the system. So one again widely reported example is Amazon's hiring tool, right? It was very
Yeah.
embarrassing for Amazon when they realized that the hiring tools had a particular bias towards male candidates or particular
Okay.
candidates. Maybe it was because the human hiring team, which used to hire before the algorithm, maybe they had a bias, again knowingly or unknowingly. So we felt that ethics is something which needs training, again
Mm,
both for humans and even for algorithms. And then the people should not be short-sighted. Again, sustainability is basically usage of natural resources
yeah.
today, so that the future generations are not compromised. So business
Absolutely.
leaders need to have a medium to long term perspective. So that's where we said don't be myopic, and then
Mm,
don't be intellectually impoverished, because intellectual property is very important, whether it's a startup or a corporate. Otherwise it can be easily copied, right? You can
yeah.
think of Porter's five forces model. So we brought all these things together and said over and beyond all these skill sets that are widely reported, you need to be far-sighted, don't be myopic, don't be
Yeah.
intellectually impoverished, don't be ethically challenged. If you fall into any of these things, you fall into the minimac trap. So that's a,
Mm,
term we coined and said, business leaders should make sure they're aware of the minimac trap and take necessary steps so that their employees don't fall into such a trap. So thanks for asking that question. That was one of the interesting frameworks we came up with. We spent a lot of time in framing that acronym, and made it a catchy minimac trap.
mm. Yeah, it's very insightful. So I'm sure people who read this book will understand a lot more things. So yes. So Ram, thanks for elaborating all on this. Any final message to all the people who will watch this podcast or the listeners?
Sure, Watson. So one cliched statement we hear always in the industry today, even in the academia, is that change is the only constant, right?
Mm,
So for students who are in the education sector now, your foundation is very important, but please be aware of it. Stay connected to the industry, because the education sector will always have a time lag in catching up with what the industry needs. So that's where industry academia connect is very important. And even for industry, how can you bring about a new graduating workforce which is ready for what the industry needs? So that's where industry academia connect is very important for both sides. It'll be a win-win situation where both work together, and policymakers can help you wherever it's required. So each one of us need to start believing in lifelong learning. So that's a separate topic by itself. But to sum it all, graduating degrees are very important, but the education sector itself is undergoing transformation. But all of us, from students, early career, mid-career, professionals, business leaders, everyone should start believing and practicing in lifelong learning, so that new skilling becomes a continuous, ongoing process and not just a one-off classroom session which we attend. So that's a final message. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts on Neoskilling, Watson. Much appreciated.
Sure, Ram. So thank you very much for the explanations.
Thank you, Watson.
Sure.